All right, so today we're going to create a to-do list or a task list. And we'll start with something really basic. So basically, initially, it will be just the first two columns of what you see here. If you want something really basic that will be really fast and easy to do, then we'll take that and basically modify it to make it more intermediate level to-do list, which is where we're going to add some more color coding and add a couple of extra columns like the due dates and completed on. So the way it's going to work, basically in this particular case, you can see that we have these colors over here that anything past due should go in this color. Anything that's due today should go in this color. Anything that's due within 7 days, it should be in gray. As you can see, these are the two right here, which you can also modify from 7 to, let's say, 14, see, or other numbers you can change here. As an example, let's add another one here and make it due today. See, that automatically colors with today's color. So tomorrow, this will not be color coded in this color. This will be past due. So if I go and change this to like a past due date, see that now goes to this past due color. And then if I go to a different day, then now I have this within 7 days. And anytime we check one of these to-dos, it automatically colors the whole row and it adds when it was completed on. It adds the date and also the time. You can use both, and I'll show you how to format differently if you wanted to. But again, I can go in here and check, see there's different to-do lists, and basically it's going to tell us when this was completed on, and we should be able to duplicate this to-do on different sheets. And basically the way it's going to work, anything that starts with to do, it's going to work the same way. So we want to make sure it starts with to do. Then after this, it can be whatever you want. And again, this should work. If I uncheck this, it should remove that completed on. If I check that back, you should see that turns back on. Now, if I didn't name this to do and just like this, if I uncheck this, see that doesn't happen. If I check, that also doesn't happen, that timestamp. So this is what I'm going to call like intermediate level when we get to this point. And that should be pretty much what we're going to cover in this video. I'll see how it goes. If there is enough demand, maybe I'll do another level video, advanced video, and maybe in that one, I'll grab things and start moving to a different list once it's complete. But for now, let's just start with this. So we'll start with an empty spreadsheet. I'll leave some space on top here because I'm not sure what I'm going to use that for. So right now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to simply create a column of tasks. And here we'll list different tasks. I'll make this a little bigger. And for now, I'm just going to type some things in here. So here it is. I'm going to assume some of these are going to get really long. So let's make the last one a little longer. And because we're going to have something really long here, I'm going to make sure I take this column and I'm going to wrap the text in this column so that it basically just fits. I will also just make these cells a little bigger as a default. So I'll highlight, well, I'll start from here and let's just do it about this much. So from here, shift, click here, resize one, should resize all of them at the same time. And this one that's a little bigger will probably resize to just fit. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and grab the same column, and I'm also going to center that vertically like this. So that should be good enough. Now in this next column on the left, I want some checkboxes. So I'm going to highlight this area. You could go longer or shorter, doesn't matter. And we'll go under data validation, and we'll choose checkbox. I'm going to reject any other input and hit save. So that's going to add some checkboxes here. As you can see, they're all aligned in the center. Let's align them to the right and make this column a little smaller. So I'm going to change this to done. And now let's just format this a little better. So I'm going to first delete all these grid lines that we have by default. So I'll go under View, remove all the grid lines. So this will allow us to do our own formatting for this. So I'll take the headers first and let's just change the background color. So you can choose obviously any one of these background colors. From here, you can go under Custom and do your own colors here. If you know your hex color, you can type it right there. And I'm going to change the color of the font to white. I'm going to take this area above and I'm going to color that in a different background as well. Again, experiment with your own colors. Try to find something that looks good to you. Next, I'm going to add some borders to have some lines between all of these different tasks. So I'll just highlight this area again. And let's just go under borders. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to choose, well, first of all, I'm going to choose a very thin border for this to start with. I'm going to choose some sort of border color for this to go with. I'll do again a custom color. And then I'm going to use the border to be this middle one right here to just have lines around all of these different tasks. Now, one of the things I want to happen, I want to make sure that when we check the checkbox, I want this entire area to change to a different background color. So we'll do that using some conditional formatting. So first of all, let's just check this single box so we can see what that looks like. And then I'm going to highlight this entire area for this. Go under Format and Conditional Formatting. And the way I'm going to apply this formatting, I'm going to choose a custom formula. And then the way I'm going to do that formula, I'm going to just refer to this checkbox itself. So the checkbox for me, this first one, is located in column D, if you look here, and row 8. So that's D8. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do $D8. Make sure you do the $sign and make sure you match your own cells. So in my case, this is the starting point. So that's where I'm going to start, D8. Now, usually you'll see people do like equals true or something like that. That's completely unnecessary because the value of the checkbox is true or false. So we can just refer to the cell and that's it. And at this point, we can just choose some sort of background color. So again, I'm going to choose some custom color. In my case, oops, background, not font. And then I'm going to make sure I change the font color to be a white color so we can see something. And hit done. And basically what's going to happen now, if I uncheck this, the formatting is gone. If I check it, you'll see it will basically just format the cell. So maybe I shouldn't have done this like to the right. Let's try to put this in the middle and see if that looks better, or maybe we should try something else. Yeah, I think this is better. So let's just do that for the whole area here, for the whole column. Like that. So looks pretty good. Let's go on top here and do some titles and things like that. So we'll do something like this. We'll just highlight an area like this with 2 rows. We'll merge those two and we'll just say to-do list. I'll change this to a white color text probably. And then I'm going to make that text probably a lot bigger than what I have right now. And then what I'll do, I'll also change the font for this entire thing. Maybe for the whole spreadsheet. Let's just highlight the whole spreadsheet. If you don't like any of these, you can always go under more fonts. And here you have all of these different options you can choose from. So for example, I can choose this, hit OK. And then you want to make sure you actually choose that font. There it is. I'm not sure I'm thrilled about this font. Let's just pick a different one. I don't know. Let's see what that looks like. Good enough. I'm not going to spend hours on this, so I'll just pick some color here, some font, and that's good. Now, we probably don't want to keep all this space in here in the middle, so we could just basically just highlight all of this, delete, and have this. But for now, I'm going to keep that because I'm thinking I may add some things in there. So let's just center this and also just make these a little smaller font. So for something very simple, that should do. Now let's try to make this better. I want to add a timestamp. So every time we check to complete something, we want to make sure that it says like it was completed on this date and this time. It might be also a good idea to have a column that says due date. So for that, let's make a couple of columns. So I'm just going to copy this E column, paste it, Command V, just so that I have the formatting. And this will be our due date. And this will be our timestamp. I'm going to clear all of this. And we'll unmerge this and merge it back like this to have this entire area. So now let's add some random due dates to this. So one thing you could do to make this experience a little better, first, let's just center all of this. And then the other thing you could do here, you could just add some data validation to this column of dates and go under data, data validation, and just choose date. So there it is valid date. So reject any other input, press save. So what this is going to do, if you just double click on the cell, it will basically just give you a calendar. And then you can just pick one from this calendar. Now it seems to come in this date format, which I don't mind. Let's see if we can control that date format. So we'll go here and do date like this. So now let's just try this again. And let's pick a different one in this column. And it seems like we're good. So that's our due dates column. We'll make that a little smaller. I'm going to make the font here probably smaller too. Let's make for both columns here. Now this, because my copy pasting, see, it still works for the whole area. If it didn't, and this didn't work the way you expected, it didn't go all the way, you can always go under Format and Conditional Formatting. When you click on this, it gives you the range, so you can update the range here. But in my case, I don't have to do that. So finally, let's try to do this completed on column. So basically the idea is going to be, if I check a box, I want this to auto-populate with a timestamp. And for that, we're going to write a script. So I'll go under Tools, Script Editor. I'll rename this. And here we're going to create a function onEdit. This is a special function that runs every time there's a change in a spreadsheet. So basically, every time we go in a spreadsheet and type something in the cell or check one of the boxes or something, that function is going to run. So that function is going to accept this E argument, and that E has information about basically what cell was modified, what's the value of the cell, and things like that. So to catch and use that, let's actually go back and create another function. This is going to be the name I'm giving this function. And I'm going to accept E for that function as well. And then I'm going to run that function every time this onEdit function runs. So we'll just put it right in here. And this is where we're going to write our code for this timestamp. So the way this is going to work, we need to basically check if the change is happening in here, in this column that's called done. And basically, if that's true, we're going to do the timestamp. So because I want this to be a little more flexible in a way I work with my data, instead of just hard coding this position, because what we're going to do, we're going to give it like a column and row number. I'm going to just find the column and row number using this header that says done. So the way we'll do that, we'll take that e.source, and that source will refer to our current spreadsheet. Now, you can think about this similar to writing something like spreadsheet app.get active spreadsheet. Now, anything that I have available in here should be also available here in the source. But you'll see when I click dot here, it doesn't autocomplete. So that's why I'm going to use this to get the autocomplete, and then I'll delete this line when I'm done. So we'll get the current sheet. That's our active sheet. So since I'm able to do it here, I'm able to do it here as well. And then in that active sheet, we should be able to do things. So one of those things would be to create a text finder like this. Because I'm going to be using that active sheet probably in other places, let's just save this in a variable. Just like this. So at this point, this active sheet is this much. So I should be able to create this text finder on that active sheet. And if you look here, when I do that create text finder, it's going to accept string as a text we're trying to find. And the text I'm trying to find is that text that says done. Now, I'm going to basically trust that nowhere else in this worksheet there's going to be done in a cell. If you think you're going to type done somewhere else, then you want to rename this to something unique so you can trust that. But for me, that should be fine. I'm just going to do done. I've just noticed these are not aligned very well, so let's actually align them. So this is going to find, hopefully, that cell. Now, this is an object. Again, I'm going to call it TF for text finder. And on that object, we're going to have different methods. So for example, one of them would be, do we want to match the entire cell or not? Do we want this to be case sensitive or not? So I only care about this one, match entire cell. And I want to set it to true. So I'm going to do TF true. We'll basically make sure that the whole cell must be done, not done doing this or something like that, right? So at this point, on that text finder object, we should have this method to actually search and find the next match right here. And that should give us a range in our spreadsheet. So if I do this, that should find the cell that says done. Let's call it cell done. So this at this point should refer to the cell, assuming we're able to actually find the cell. So from this cell now, I'm going to get the row number and the column number to know where this is supposed to start. So I'm going to say cell done dot get row. And then we'll do the same for column. Now, the reason I know that this get row and this get column exist is because, again, if I just go here and do dot and do get row, see it's right here, or if I do get column, there it is. So we have the row, we have the column, so that should now refer to this row and this column right here. So row 7, column number 4, whatever that is. So at this point, we're going to say, if the cell that we're modifying is located in this column where the done is, and then it's located right below this cell that says done, so basically here in this area, then we want to act on that. So we'll do that by basically taking that E variable right here on top, and that E variable is going to have this, let's actually set this here on top. Let's call it modified range. Let's actually, in this case, call it cell. And on that, we'll do e.range. And this will be our modified cell. So now we'll do an if condition. We'll say if that modified cell dot get row. Actually, let's start with the column. If the modified column is equal to this column where we have done, and at the same time that modified cell dot get row is greater than that row that I have in here. And the reason I'm doing greater than is because done is going to be right in here. We want to check the checkboxes, which is the next one down over here. So if both of these things are true, then we want to react on this. If not, we don't want to do anything. Because I don't want to do a lot of brackets and things like that, I'm just going to reverse this logic. So I'm going to say, if not this, and the way I'll do that, I'll just add an exclamation sign, open parentheses, and close parentheses all the way down here in the end. So we'll have double parentheses here. So if it's not in the range that we're trying to target, then we're going to just do return, meaning stop doing the rest. So this is basically like a guard statement. Now we're going to assume that everything is fine. So we're doing everything in the correct range. Now we're going to react on this. Let's check if the value of the box, the checkbox, is true. Then let's go and add a timestamp here in this column to the right. So we'll say if that modified cell dot value, so if the value of that modified cell equals to true, then what we want to do, we want to basically add a timestamp. So let's add some brackets here and do our statement here. So we're going to do that timestamp basically over here in this completed on. Now you can go different ways about this. You can do another text finder and try to find where this column is and go with that column number. For me, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3 columns to the right, basically, from the column that the checkbox is in. And the way we can do that, now, again, if I go back to this range right in here, let's actually just do something like get active cell, so we get a range object. And on this, we can do something like offset. And offset basically tells us how many rows we can go up and down and how many rows we want to go right and left. So as you can see, the first one is the row offset and the second one is the column. So I'm just going to do offset, pretty much the way it says. The row is going to be in the same row where the checkbox was checked. So I'll do 0 offset for the row. And for the column, 3, right? 3 columns to the right. So I'm going to go to that and I'm going to set value in that cell. Again, you can know that this is available if you just do set, see, value right there. And then it's going to accept a value object. And in this case, I'm just going to do a new date object in JavaScript to get the current date and time in that cell. Let's actually comment this line because otherwise we're going to get an error message. This is a very long line, so it goes to the next line too. Let's try to test this so far to see if this even works at this point. So I'm going to go back and save this, go back to our spreadsheet, and check one of these checkboxes. I don't see anything in there. So that tells me that this didn't really work out the way it should have. So I need to go and troubleshoot and see what's wrong with our current code. And we should be able to do that if we just go to this executions. We should see if there are any errors. So as you can see, it says there are no errors. Okay, so it didn't get any errors, but it wasn't able to do what it needs to do. So the first thing I'm going to do to troubleshoot this, I'm going to add a console log statement in here. And basically, let's just do the row and the column variables we have here on top. Let's see if this whole thing even gets to this point of finding the row and the column number of our cell that says done. And if it doesn't, we'll have to go check why it didn't work. If it does, then we'll see what we did here that doesn't work. So I'm going to save this, go back and simply just check one of these checkboxes. Doesn't matter which one. Go back to my script editor and open executions. And as you can see, I got 7, 4. So basically that says row number 7, there it is, column number 4. So that part seems to work just fine. We don't have any issues with that part of our code. So we are finding the correct row and column number. So now let's try to remove this console logs and do another console log after this guard statement to see if we're passing that guard. So I'm going to do console log, I'm here. So if this doesn't show up in our logs, then we're basically going to know that this failed. Now let's go and check. So I'm going to save this, Control S or Command S, go back and check one of the checkboxes. Let's go back and take a look at our executions and open the last one. And it says, I'm here. So that now tells me that it was able to get to this point. So the guard statement is not the problem. So that means the problem is someplace over here. So now let's see what happens here. See, we did this modified dot value equals true. So let's try to see if we can console log this modified cell dot value. Maybe this is not a correct property name that I picked. Maybe I don't remember this correctly. Let's see if this is getting the value of the checkbox or not. So I'm going to save this again, go back, and again, we'll just check one of the boxes right in here and go back and take a look at our executions. So as you can see, I got nothing, which is odd. Okay, so it was just taking time. So it says undefined. There is our problem. So apparently this dot value didn't work. I'm going to go open the documentation for the event object for this onAddit and see what it's supposed to be called. So here we are, the docs for event object. Let's scroll down and see Google Sheet events. We're going to have to find the one that's onAddit. So not change, edit. There it is. And see, there's old value on that. All right, so the value does exist, but what I did incorrect here is this value is not on the range. It's on the event itself. And in this case, I did modified cell.value. This should have been e.value right in here. Let's try to console log this to see if this works. So if this is accurate, then it should give us that checkbox value. So let's save this, go back and check this box. And go back and look at our executions again. So as you can see, it says true. Now, I'm not sure why this is all in caps. It almost seems like this is basically grabbing that value as text, not as a Boolean value. Nevertheless, if I do e.value, and that seemed like text because of the uppercase. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to make this true uppercase text like this. Let's try this. So I'm going to save this, go back to my spreadsheet, check. Well, since I'm done with all of these, let's check this one. There it is. I got my timestamp here in this column. And as you can see, it gives me the date and the time here on the top. Here, it's just the formatting. It only gives us the date. Now you can have both. You can either do this or you can change the formatting of this cell to be date time like this to have both date and time. I'm just going to choose date for me. I'm sure you can figure out which one works better for you, but we have a timestamp that works. Now, one thing I want to modify about this though is that if I uncheck this box, I want to remove this value from here. So let me just clear all of these for now. So we'll say, if this is false, then we're going to clear this value right here. So we'll just say else, I guess, to simplify this. So in all the other cases, we'll take the same thing. And instead of setting the value, we're going to do, there should be something like clear on this, but again, because this doesn't give me autocomplete, we'll use this to get our autocomplete. There it is. So clear content, that's what we're looking for. So I'm going to put it right in there, and then I'm going to comment this because it looks like I'm going to need that. Save everything in the code section. Let's go back here. Let's test this, see what happens. So if I check the box here, completed on shows up right away. If I uncheck it, that disappears. Let's check this one and this one. Excellent. Check this one too. Uncheck this. Works just fine. Now, because of the way I set this up, I should be able to go here and delete a column. And then this whole thing should still work just fine. See? Because we're finding this done cell and we're reacting on that. Very good. Now, I want to add another check to the script. So I'm going to assume you may want to do like different to-do lists. So once you got to the way you want this whole thing to work, maybe you're going to call this like the first one like week 1, then week 2, or maybe you have different types of to-do lists, whatever that's going to be. So basically we'll just choose some word that we're going to rely on to check if this is one of the to-do list worksheets. So I'll just call it to-do. I'm sure you'll find your way of labeling this. I'll just do to-do 1 for this one. And then I'm going to duplicate this. And I'm going to call this one to-do 2. So basically the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to say if the worksheet starts with to-do, then it's one of the sheets and we want our script to do exactly the same thing as it did before. So we'll go back to our script. And basically in this guard statement, we want to also check the worksheet to make sure we're basically in the right sheet. So we should be able to do that by basically getting the name of the active sheet. So I'm going to add another guard statement here. Again, autocomplete doesn't work, so I'm going to go here and get that autocomplete from this active sheet over here. Let's remove this comment. Get sheet name. There it is. See, it's going to give us a string, which is basically the name of the current sheet. So same thing here. With that current worksheet name, we want to make sure that it starts with this to do. So I'm going to do dot, and then I think JavaScript should have string methods here, but they don't show up. So let's just force that by doing toString on this and see if that now gives us our autocomplete. So apparently it doesn't. So let's try to trick this below. There it is. See, there's ends with. We don't want to do that. Let's see if there's a starts with. There it is, string. That should be available on this. So we'll say if it starts with to do, exactly the same way I did it here. Obviously, you can use something different instead of to do. So this should give us true or false. So basically, I'm going to do an if statement, put this whole thing in this. And if it's not to do, so we'll again do an exclamation sign here to reverse this. We're just going to return. So if the worksheet that we're on is not a to-do worksheet, we're not going to execute. So now I'm going to call it guard statements because we have two. Save this. Let's try this and see if this whole thing works. So I should be able to go back now and check the box and see completed on works. If I go to do 2, check this box, that still works. Now, if I duplicate this and rename this one, see this one says copy of to do 2. So it doesn't have to do in the beginning. If I check the box, see, nothing happens. That's exactly what I wanted. So now we have a way to know the difference. I'm sure you're going to have more worksheets in your spreadsheet than your to-do sheets. The next thing I want to add to this, I want to work with this due dates a little bit. So what I want to do, let's actually uncheck this. And let's delete this. What I want to do first, I want to have some sort of color coding happening here if the due date is today. So we're going to do some conditional formatting for this. I'm going to just highlight this range again, go to Format, Conditional Formatting, add another rule, custom formula. Now, I could just say equals today. So today is a function in Excel that gives you today's date. Every day it updates. So I can check if today's date equals to the date here in this due date cell. So that would be F and this 8 right here. So we're going to do $F and 8. So you can see how this is being highlighted now because that's actually today. And we could choose some sort of format, whatever we decide that's going to be. Now, what I don't like about this is that this will work if we just have straight up dates, but if we have date times for due dates, this is not going to work very well. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add an AND function. I'm going to check if the date that's in the cell is greater than or equal to, in this case, less than, or actually, let's just switch these. So we'll just say if that is greater than or equal to today. So basically, if the due date is greater than or equal to today, comma, and at the same time, we'll do that same $F8 is less than, and here I'm going to do a set of parentheses like this, and then I'm going to close parentheses again. So this last parentheses is closing that initial AND function that I have all the way on the left here, this one. And these parentheses I did so I can do some calculation here between these parentheses. And for that, I'm just going to do the function today, open close parentheses for the function like this. And right after parentheses, I'm going to do +1. So basically, I'm doing today +1, meaning tomorrow. So basically, I want the due date to be less than tomorrow and greater than or equal to today. So basically this way it will be, if you have times, it will still work just fine. Done. So at this point, if we check the box, it should still go to this color. If we uncheck it, if it's today, see we get this color coding. So it's going to be similar idea to this first one if you wanted to do past due or something like that. So let's just go here on the left and assign some colors to different statuses. So we'll just pick some color here. Now I want this 7 to be modifiable by the user. So what I'll do, I'll just do something like this. Add a column here. Add another column. Type days here. Remove this 7 from here and type that 7 in this middle column that I've just created. We'll make that centered. And this will make a drop down. So we'll go under data, data validation, and list of items. And here I'm going to do different options. 7, 14, 30. No spaces. Reject any other input. Hit save. Maybe I now have to make this column a little bigger. So now we can see, choose different options here. I'll do some borders again, like this. And now let's try to modify some of these things. I did the today thing, so currently if I go back and change this to today, see, that will automatically update. Now I want to do this sort of thing for past due, so it goes to this color. So we basically just have to repeat our conditional formatting. So I'll highlight this, go under format, conditional formatting, and we'll add another rule and do a custom formula. And we're going to check against the due date and today. So if it's past, we want to do the color. So I'm going to do equals. and do dollar, again, the due date for me now is, it used to be in F, but I did some columns here. So now it's in H8. So if H8 is less than today, then we want to do some color coding. But at the same time, see, we don't want this empty ones to be highlighted too. So I'm going to do an AND statement on this. Close this statement all the way to the end, right in here. And I'm going to do a comma. And right before that comma, we're going to do, again, $H8. So I'm going to say if H8 is not equal to blank, double quotes, and at the same time it's less than today, then we're going to do the color. So I'm going to choose that red, darker, whatever I picked. This one, hit done. As you can see, nothing happened because none of these are actually past due. Let's try to change one of these to like an earlier day. Let's try to do 1 day before. And as you can see, our past due now works. And the next one I want to do is this next 14 days. And again, we have to refer to this cell right here, C5, for this whole thing to work. So I'm going to highlight the area, add another rule. So we'll do custom formula is, choose some background color for this. I'll do this light gray, like it says over here. So basically, if the due date is within 14 days of today, we want to color code that gray. So if I take today's date, add 14 days, then I can compare that to this due date. So I'm going to do equals, and in parentheses, I'm going to take today function, and I'm going to add 14 days. Only instead of typing 14 hard-coded, I'm going to refer to this cell right in here, C5. So $C, $5. So that should be today plus 14. And we want to compare that to our due date right in here. And if we get, whatever we get is greater than the due date, so greater than $H8, then we would like to color that gray. I think I got that right. Let's test this and see what happens. So I'm going to hit done. So let's check this. So all of these are either past due or today. Let's try to do something like next week. So everything goes gray. So far, so good. Let's try to go a little further down. So that went white. That's good. Now let's try. So if today is 5/26 or something, so by here, it should lose the color. See, no color. Let's go back 1 day. 10th, it still doesn't have the color. If we go one more to the left, see, it goes gray. Now, if you wanted that to be included, like this 1 day in there too, you could. I don't. So for me, this is good. You can go back, modify your formula. I'm sure you can figure out what's going on based on these examples I just did. The only thing I don't like about this is that these are also gray, which is basically things that are blank. So to take care of that, I'm going to do something similar to this that I just did here. So I'm going to go back to this, and then I'm going to do an AND function, open parentheses, and make sure I go and close that function all the way down here. And then basically I'll go right after that AND function beginning, and I'll do $H8 due date if basically it's not blank, comma, and at the same time it's that logic. So that should take care of that. Hit done. So now we have this situation when anything within the next 14 days. Now again, that's 14 because this says 14. If I, for example, change this to 7, see, this is not going to get color coded. Now we have this dynamic way. We can do 30 days, we can do 14 days, we can do 7 days. I'm going to make this number a little smaller. I'm starting to realize I probably don't need all of these things over here. Let's delete some of these things that I don't think we're going to need. We should probably delete this one too. The rest I'm going to keep as is. I'll just merge all of this together. Here we go. I'll change it to like 7 days. Now we have this thing working. So this is today. If we check the box, it should complete that. And as you can see, it works just fine.